Hey guys, welcome back to Aim High. This is the place to be. On this channel, what we do is we help Christians answer hard questions. And today, the question is um, what do we do with all these myths, right? There are many people, whether you are single, whether you are courting, who unfortunately believe in certain types of myths as it relates to marriage. Now, for those of you who are new on this channel, my name is Mike. This is
And my name is Emmeline, but you could call me Emma.
and we're gonna talk about this guy. So we're just celebrating 11 years of marriage.
Ooh.
So yeah, so that's what we're talking about, guys. So we're just gonna share with you guys our experience being married as believers. You want to say anything? Just
Yeah, so we're just gonna talk about a lot of things pertaining to marriage. And since you have been married for 11 years, we wanted to come out here and we could just give our input. I think we're allowed to after being married for 11 years.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's get into it, guys. So the first question is this: what should you look for in a spouse? What would be one of those key things to look for within a spouse? And
Mm.
the first point we want to talk about is the fact that a person who loves God, we believe, is essential. Or it's an essential ingredient for
Yeah.
believers to seek out a, a partner that actually loves God and
Mm-hmm.
not only loves God, but genuinely loves God,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, you have anything you wanna
And
say on
yeah,
that point?
just look for a partner that could accept you as you are, like with all your flaws, whatever you bring to the table, that they fully accept you and just love you unconditionally. It doesn't matter what you're going through at the moment, it doesn't matter what you may be like, what blockage you have or hindrance in your life. That God, they're gonna love you with the love of Christ.
Yeah,
That look beyond the fleshly things, the worldly things, and love you for your heart.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. I think that's important. Unconditional love. But that comes through obviously someone having a genuine relationship with Jesus. Because a lot of times we ask the question like, how do you know if someone has a genuine relationship with God? A lot of people, um, to be honest, right, growing up in church, I realized like a lot of people actually fake it to make it in a sense and pretend to be something that they're
Yeah,
actually
they're
not,
not.
to commit and have a relationship or build a relationship with this particular person in order to gain something out of that person,
Yeah.
right? But the love is not really genuine. And I believe that a lot of times the way to really dissect this stuff is to see how much is this person receiving versus how much are they willing to give into the relationship. That speaks loud and that speaks
Yeah.
volumes in terms of, is this person's heart, or is their intentions really genuine?
Yeah. And sometimes, like when you're in love or in lust, whatever it may be, you don't see um the red flags and of that person. So maybe asking God and praying, God, is that the person for you? And maybe God might be saying yes, and God might be saying no. He might have something that's not your path. He might have something better in store for you. And because we're so in love, like I feel like we get blinded by what God is saying. Like we don't hear God. We just hear our emotions. We hear ourselves and we just feed onto that because as human we all have needs. We all have something that we look for in a spouse. And
Yeah.
if we see that that person has that, you want to run for it. But so God has different plan for your life. So it's very important to know that the voice of God and to know your emotions, like what's really speaking. Is it God or is it my emotions?
Yeah, very, very, very important,
Mm.
right? Because emotions, for many of you who are in this season of actually, looking for a spouse, we know that
Mm-hmm.
emotions speak very, very loud. So
Mm-hmm.
that is definitely a critical thing to take in. Also, as it relates to what to look for in a spouse, I believe that, or we believe that it's important to find someone who is on the same page with you, right? Someone who's going the same way you are going as it relates to life. And it starts with just very simple, basic questions, right? Like, you wouldn't believe how much issues the question, or the, I guess, the mindset is when it comes down to like questions such as how many kids should we have, um
Mm.
should we buy or rent, where should we live.
Oh, about finances, it's a huge one in
Yeah,
marriage. Oh, are we gonna join account? Are we gonna have our own separate accounts? And who's gonna pay the bills? Who's responsible for the mortgage, the light bill, the light bill, the and water bill? These little petty things are so important that we overlook, but are things that you need to iron out before actually jumping into something. And that's a way you know your spouse, what kind of person they are, and what they would stand for, what they wouldn't stand for, what they will let pass, what they would not pass. And some men, "Okay, I'm the man of the house. I'll take care of that." And they'll give you a couple bills to take care of. But like, you know what? I'm gonna join my account together, and it's my money is your money. We don't do this kind of separating money thing.
yeah,
Everybody's different,
yeah.
right?
So for us, we joined accounts. There wasn't an issue for us. We believe, as the scriptures highlight, when the two becomes one, the two becomes one in all things. So that's why we just didn't hesitate. And that's another point. I think that it's important to, you want to marry someone, like, we understand how the way of the world works. We understand humans and how humans work. We understand that people change over time and whatnot. But at the same time, you want to marry someone who you're able to entrust your life to. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? And I think
yeah,
that
that's
sometimes
true.
there are some red flags when there's some type of hesitation
To
to
even joining
to
stuff
even joining
together.
stuff together.
Which I feel like, if like personally, if I feel that way about someone I'm courting, that I don't feel I could trust that person with my life or my finances or my whatever it may be, to me I feel like that's a red flag, because I'll be like, oh, well, you never know. God could be saying, yeah, that's the one for you.
Yeah,
But when it comes to joining money together, it's a big thing. Some
yeah,
people, they spend lavishly, or they
yeah,
have a drinking problem, or
yes,
whatever it may be.
yes,
They have a spending problem, right?
yeah.
So that's something that you need to use wisdom about,
Mhm.
you know.
Before you get into the marriage, like,
Mm-hmm.
to me, like, to be honest, these are things that you need to find out. You need to know. It's critical before you get into the marriage, because it's not going away when you get into the marriage. Another myth that many people have, and I find this very common, especially among single Christian women, is if I marry him, he's going to change, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
marry this unbeliever, he's going to become a believer. You understand? If I marry this person who has this specific habit, that habit is going to go away after marriage, and that is a huge deception, because it's not true. And obviously, you won't find that anywhere in scripture, but you won't find that true in life unless God does a supernatural work and just intervenes. And he does that at times, right? Where even both couples go in the marriage unsaved, and they end up saved by God over time as they're in a marriage. But generally speaking, it's not a wise decision to partner with someone who doesn't love God and expect them to love God because he married them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So now, another question is this. Oh yeah, sorry. Back on that before we even move forward. I think ministry is important, right? You want to be on board with ministry and with your idea, and that individual's idea as it relates to how ministry looks like for the both of you, and to find common ground there. Because if you guys are on opposite ends as it relates to ministry, that could greatly affect the marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you're married to someone who believes that their call is to be a missionary and to travel to, all around the world, and bring the message of Jesus across every continent, but you don't see that as something that God is calling you to,
Mm-hmm.
something that you're open to,
Yeah.
that will cause conflict, because you cannot root that passion out of that person's heart, and you ought not to try to root the passion that God put in that person's heart.
Yeah.
You know,
Sometimes it's just not. And I'm not saying that God cannot put a missionary and then someone that's like that does healing ministry, whatever it may be.
mm-hmm.
Everyone have different gifts. I'm not saying God cannot put this together and have a beautiful way of making it work. He
Yeah,
could,
definitely.
but you have to know that you're prepared. If you're marrying a missionary that's going to travel the world, you have to know that, hey, I'm going to be home. Keep in mind, I'm going to be home by myself
Yeah.
for a couple of months. I'm going to be home with the kids by myself
Mhm.
for a few months. And that's something you have to be okay with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
definitely. Very important. And and as you mentioned earlier, a lot of times emotions, right? Because our feelings towards this particular person,
mm,
you know, blinds us to some of these things, right? This person is a Christian, they're so good, right? And that's where it starts, right? Someone who loves God. But then you gotta look into these other little things, habits, as we mentioned, addictions, as we mentioned, right? People who love God could actually have bad habits and addictions,
that they're
right?
trying to, and that they're trying to get
That they're
over,
trying to get over. And
right?
sometimes it's important for them to deal with that before they bring it into a
Mm,
marriage, to be
yeah.
completely honest. And oftentimes you'll find, as you just mentioned, even ministry, the good things in life, you got to be prepared if you choose, right? This is subjective. If you choose to commit yourself to someone who is, doing something that is totally opposite of what you believe you're called to do, you got to make that conscious decision, as Emmeline said, to say, hey, look, if that's what we're going to do, then I understand the sacrifices that have to be made. Now, moving forward, guys, how to know if you are ready for marriage? Like, what are some of the things that we could think about and some of the questions that we ought to ask when it comes down to if whether or not we are actually ready for marriage? So, one of the points we put here is don't waste time waiting if God confirmed it. That's just something that we believe,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't waste time. But what do we want to expound on that, Emily? Like, what do we mean by like don't waste time on
Like
if God confirmed it already?
like for me, I see marriage as something so unique and special, and in a godly way, not in the way the world or other people see it. I feel like if you're certain and God has confirmed that, hey, Michael, you're the one for me, I don't see why I have to wait for so long before we seal the deal.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't see why, because some people say, "Hey, we don't have the money," or they will say, "We don't have whatever
yeah,
yet," right? But for me, I feel like that's something you could work towards together.
yeah,
If God put you together and He said, "Hey, that's the person for you," you could work together you build each other up, you
yeah.
grow together, you build together, which is so beautiful. I remember when Michael proposed to me, I was still in school. I was in my last year of school,
Mhm.
and Michael, were you done school?
I believe I was done. Yeah, I was done school. Yeah.
Yeah. So but then I was in my last year of school and working, and I said, you know what? I went to my pastor. I told my pastor, hey, Michael proposed to me, and he proposed to me in August, and he said that we're gonna wait a whole year
Hmm.
before we got married,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, I was fine with that. And my pastor is like, why are you guys waiting for? Is there a reason that's stopping you guys from getting married? Like he proposed to you, he loves you. You guys said that, hey, God said this, so what's the wait? And I'm like, oh, you make sense. And then we got married earlier. We got married in April,
Yeah.
so we got married sooner than we were anticipating, and everything wasn't in place. As I said, I was still in school. We didn't have the finances because I was still paying for my school. We had nothing, and God just blessed us with everything. The whole wedding. I don't know how it happened. We had a beautiful wedding, and it just come together. We had a lot of support
Hmm.
from people. Like God just bring people in our life that would bless us financially.
Yeah.
God bless us with like the hall, the limousine, everything. God just put people in our lives to
In
just bless
place.
us, and
Hmm.
that's a beautiful thing. Like it's like, you know what, that is a marriage that God put together.
Amen.
When you know that, hey, I had nothing and God just bring people in my life to like bless me with financial blessing, bless me with everything to make my wedding this beautiful wedding that I dream of. That is God's work. That is God's doing. So sometimes if you know that is God, if you know, and you know that God tell you, he will make everything, he will put everything together. And it's a leap of faith. It's all faith. Not everybody would do that. Some people want to wait till they have the house, till they have the car, till they have this. But we took the leap of faith, and I don't regret it. And we're married for 11 years. We're building together. We're growing together. Everything we did, where we are right now, we did it together. We build
We built
together,
Yeah.
And which
Yeah.
is beautiful. Like I don't regret it. I like that we build together.
Yeah.
Everything that we own, we build together to own it, you know?
Yeah. Amen. I'm gonna highlight this comment. Bastion Smith. Glory be to God. Beautiful story. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now check this out. To add to this story, prior to getting married, about like a month and a half prior to getting married, I actually lost my job. So literally, like, we're gonna get married and I don't have a job. You understand? Like, and I can't even remember how much money I had in the account. All I know, right? All I know, I remember I was so stressed out one day. And I called a good friend of mine and I was sharing with them like the stuff that I was going through, because literally we're gonna get married in a month. I lost my job. How am I gonna provide? How is the wedding gonna go forward? And lo and behold, man, like, he just gave me a word, like a sound word. And I sat on that word and I was like, okay, now, man, I'm gonna trust God. Interestingly enough, ultimately God provided me with a job, a better job, something that made sense for the time in terms of what I had to deal with and the expenses that I had to deal with. And it's interesting, but because it seemed as if I had to get out of that job that I was already in order for God to position me in a new job. And that's just, one small example. As Emily mentioned, like, there's
Like
so many things
everything was going bad.
yeah, everything was going
Like
bad.
I feel like your cell phone, I think you lost your cell
Yeah,
phone.
I lost my
They
phone,
wouldn't give you a new one because they said that
the contract or
you
something.
didn't pay some contract,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So, and that's another thing. That's the enemy. He's trying to distract you. Like everything's starting to go bad for us. Like, how are you gonna get married? Like now he lost his job. Now everything was, our car is breaking down. Everything was going bad. And some people say, you know what, forget this wedding. I'm not gonna have this wedding anymore because you know what, too much expenses is coming up. But no, we just remain faithful and everything turned out beautiful.
Yeah. So that's just our story, right? Now, once again, we're not saying that if you and the person that you're with make a conscious decision to not get married until certain things are in place, that's okay. That's on you.
Okay,
This is just what we're basically saying is, once God confirms it, we believe that God will complete it. That's what we're saying, and we're not just saying that because we read it in the Bible. We're saying that because that was real for us. That actually happened for us. So that's why we share what we share. So look, my hope is, if you're in a situation right now where you're hesitant to get married because everything is not 100% where it ought to be, your finances, whatever it is, the list goes on. Trust God, right?
Trust God.
That's what we could say on that one. Trust God.
Mhm.
So now, another thing very important when it comes on to marriage. This is something that a lot of people overlook. When you get married, right? And I know the Wi-Fi connection may be a little in and out, so our apologies if there's any poor connection on this live. But listen to this: when you get married, you're not only marrying your spouse, right? You're actually marrying yourself into your family, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And this is something that a lot of people overlook and take for granted, right? I've seen strife within family, right? Because of in-laws and all this kind of stuff. So it's very important to know that though you love this person, you got to be ready to engage in other relationships, as it relates to family. Now, you have anything you want to add on that one?
Family plays a great part in your marriage when you're planning to get married to someone. But I could say that if you know that person is for you, do not allow your family to derail you, to tell you, hey, that's not for
That's not for
you.
you. Yeah.
Do not allow any outside voice to speak into your union, to speak into what God has put together. I could
Man.
say that. Um, for us, we had a rocky start, but then we persevere. Like I persevere. For him, my family is not in Canada, so he didn't have to really
Yeah, I didn't really have to
had to
like go. I didn't necessarily have to go up to her father and anything, or
yeah.
whatever the case may be. But I did, you know, your aunt, right?
Mhm.
Who so Emily's aunt, who was taking care of her at the time, that was the
My
individual that,
adopted mom.
right, her adopted mom. That's the person that I was communicating with as it relates to my interest for Emmeline. But I
Mhm.
didn't really have to deal so much with her family
Family.
until a year after, when I actually when we actually
I,
went on. Was it a year after, or was it the
no, the
same
same
year?
year.
Actually, the same year, where we actually flew over to the beautiful island my wife is from, and I met her family. Very cool. Got along, right?
It
Um,
wasn't bad.
it
I
wasn't
feel
bad.
like for me it was worse.
Yeah, for her now on the opposite end of the scale, right? Emmeline now, in a way, marry my family, and I have two sisters and a brother. My brother doesn't really care so much, but you know, I'm not gonna get into it too much, but there were some rough patches,
Yeah.
right? Between Emmeline and her being accepted um into this family. So she
Mhm.
she she went through it, and I'm telling you guys, right? Because I know her, obviously, through courting and whatnot. I was certain in what I was doing. Now, let's not get it confused though. There are family members who may see certain things that you don't see because you may be blinded to certain things. But at the same time, we just gotta be very careful, in terms
Mhm.
of like how to gauge, because there are a lot of things that are going on in the background when it comes down to family, right?
Mhm.
And you don't really know someone's intentions, but you got to be very, very diligent. Like, how do you get to the point, anyways, when you are you even able to really read someone's intentions? What do you say? Like, how do you
Of
know
course, you
know
could read you could read
if
someone
if your
intentions.
sibling or your cousins, if they're for you or if they're really for themselves, as relates to like
Yeah.
giving yourself over to this marriage? Because some people are for yourself, right? Some
Mhm.
people, they dream of being where you are, and they just kind of like do different things in the background to try to interrupt whatever God is doing. And then you do have good people around you who really care about you, and they see the red flags. They see that your spouse may be, or the person you want to marry may be abusive or whatever. They see these things, and you don't see these things. So
Mhm.
how do you determine? This is a real question, right? How do you determine these things, right? What do you say?
I don't know because for some, like our situation wasn't that
It wasn't that. It
wasn't
wasn't
that
that deep. It
deep
wasn't that deep.
and that big. Like wasn't that deep. For some people, like they overlook certain things because they're blinded by love. Like they feel like, hey, I love this person, and they don't see the red flags. They
Yeah.
really don't. Like when you love, you don't see red flags.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's emotions. Your emotions are taking over.
Yeah.
But I could say that if you are having problem with family, I could say that persevere, continue to persevere, be who you are, do not change for anybody. You are who you are. Like if you put on like a fake self, then it's not gonna last forever. You give them who you are. You cannot be someone that you're not,
True.
and either they have to deal with it or they don't, or they find ways to accept it. But
Mhm.
do not change. Be very kind. Do not be disrespectful.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Find ways to connect. Find ways to like find similarities. Like for my mom-in-law, and I find with similarities in her that I could connect with, that we could talk about, and we build a big relationship. Because when I first started coming around, I'm very shy, I'm very reserved, and she didn't like that. I was very reserved. I stick with Michael wherever he goes, like attached to him. I wasn't speaking, and that's my personality. I don't really talk a lot if I don't know you, or if I'm in a new environment. I'm very, very quiet. So for my mom-in-law, I had to just and we're both in healthcare, and that's something that actually um, brought us
Brought it together.
closer and allow us to build a relationship, and we just build on that. So find something that's like your in-laws are interested in and build on it,
Yeah.
so that's how we overcome these hurdles. For my sister-in-law, like the main thing was my mom-in-law, like they just come around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just came around.
That's another thing too, right?
Mhm.
So that's an interesting point because sometimes, interestingly enough, if one person's perception of you changes, that could
Mhm.
influence other people's perception of you, you know?
Mhm.
So that's a great example of how, how Emmeline was able, and not just able, but willing to connect with my mom. That sort of brought everybody, you know, on the same page. I think that's powerful.
Mhm.
Now, there's a few other things, guys. Quite a few myths that many people have about marriage, and we're going to read out a few of them. Check this out, guys. So, one of the key myths that many people have about marriage is that you will live happily ever after,
Fairy tales.
right? Now, I
Mhm.
know we watch Disney. I watched a lot of Disney growing up, and that was the reality, right? The problem is that was animated stuff, right?
Mhm.
Cartoons, guys. This is not reality.
Mhm.
Now, I'll be honest. There is some truth to this. You could live happily ever after, but it just doesn't happen naturally, guys. Now, I did not really know this until literally just recently. How much work and effort marriage, like a healthy marriage, actually takes. A lot of people are just married based upon the covenant that they made. A lot of people are just married based upon the ring. A lot of people are married, just based upon, whatever the government has them labeled as, but they're not really connected to their spouse. They're not really into their spouse the way they ought to be. They're not really growing a healthy, vibrant marriage. There are many people who have been married for years, but in their hearts it's as if they haven't been married for years. You know what I'm saying? And that's because they have not taken the time to work on their marriage. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that is very, very dangerous. So for me, for example, like when it came down to understanding why it's important to work on the marriage, I understood this was important because I found that Emmeline at times will become very discouraged, and she will literally need me at times. And at times I would be distant. And for whatever reason, I just felt like I already have her. It's interesting because it's like prior to getting married, I was pursuing her. Prior to getting married, I was shaved. I was, you know what I mean? I looked half decent. Right. Prior to getting married, I was like, really, really invested.
Trying.
Right. But once I got that pot of gold, I didn't invest it. Right. I kind of just
Mhm.
put it in the vault. You understand
Mhm.
where I'm coming from? So
Mhm.
when we do that, what happens? We're not really growing the interest on that wealth, on that stack. But we got to build interest in our marriage, guys. We got to invest our marriage. We got to invest into our marriage, because what we want is not just to be married, but we want to have a happy marriage, have a beautiful marriage, have a fruitful marriage, and not constantly ask ourselves the question, boy, oh boy, am I not better off if I was single? Right. And this is a question that came to my mind many times. And I know this is something that came to Emmeline's mind at times, where it's like, if this is what marriage is, then what the heck are we doing? Right. So for me, I think that is very important. After 11 years of marriage, I never knew it so much to the point where I know now how important it is to actually really take time to think and to work on your marriage. Some of the ways we could do that is through just communicating with each other, right? And other ways, and very important ways that I believe we ought to do that, is in, counseling, right? Um, and just, just opening up and being honest with where we
Mhm.
feel and where we are at as it relates to our relationship, as it relates to our marriage. So we invest in a lot of things, right? But marriage is one of those things that we overlook. At least for me, I've overlooked it a lot because I already had the bag. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, right? But marriage is a constant pursuit. It's interesting because we have a relationship with God, but we constantly pursue God, and God has a relationship with us, but He constantly pursues us at the same time.
I
So,
know the honeymoon phase don't last forever.
no,
Like you're courting and you get married and you're so happy and you're so in love, lovey-dovey,
not everything.
and all of that thing.
It goes away.
Yes, it don't last forever.
100%, it goes away. Matter of fact, in most marriages, they say, according to the stats, the first year of marriage is typically the most difficult year of marriage, because the honeymoon phase, once you get home and reality strikes, you realize that the honeymoon is over. But but I believe it's possible, and I could say that based upon our 11th year anniversary, it's possible to relive the honeymoon phase, but it just doesn't happen like that, right? It's like it's so natural for every one of us to step out of that phase, right? But we could continue to. That's why I think that's important to build. It's important to build, as you mentioned earlier, to build on our marriage, because it does go away. It's emotional. It's emotional, right? Now, guys, we're gonna go a little deeper. The sex is always good. That's another myth, unfortunately, that's out there. And I say unfortunately because I wish that this could be true, but the sex is not always good. Right? Let's just keep it a buck, right? I wish this could be true, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Now we're gonna talk about this a little bit because I think that this is very important. There are two things that hurt a marriage, right? And the two main things that cause divorce is money and sex, right? And these are things that need to be dealt with accordingly amongst each other. Now, going into marriage, there's a few different ways to look at it. That's why when the Bible speaks about keeping yourself, preserving yourself, it's very important, because one of the issues that happens a lot of times with spouses is when they go into marriage and they begin to have sexual intercourse with each other and whatnot. Unfortunately, at least this happened to me, right? I would think about past experiences at times. And what we do sometimes is we begin to compare and contrast different sexual experiences, and even if you didn't go all the way in, right, it could be any type of experience or sexual encounter that you had in the past, whether it's just kissing, whether it's whatever. You could easily bring that into your marriage and compare your spouse to that particular person and to that particular experience. Very, very, very dangerous. Another thing too is the Bible actually speaks about, in the Songs of Solomon, enjoy your spouse, right? Enjoy every part of your spouse. If you're not careful in marriage, right, you could, sexually speaking, disconnect from your spouse, right? For a lot of reasons, in a lot of ways. A lot of times what happens that may affect sex is external things, right? So what I mean by that is stress at work, stress concerning ministry, stress relating to the kids. So many things that could impact your sexual life and well-being in marriage. And I will say one of the number one things is believing sex to be something that Hollywood says sex is, and not. And this is one thing that's very important as it relates to sex. I want to leave you guys with this. Sex is about what you and your spouse choose to make it. All right. It's not necessarily about what you may think it is. A lot of times, this is what I had to learn, right? Sex is not all about penetration all the time, right? Sex carries much more weight than that, so you and your spouse, right? You have to make it, you have to enjoy each other, and you got to make it what you guys make it, as opposed to making it what you think it should be and putting that pressure to always be there and always perform or always be wanting it and always et cetera, so that's really where it starts. And the way we could have healthy sexual relationships within our marriage is to communicate properly, invest in our marriage, right? That's the key thing, right? Invest in our marriage. And I think that those kind of things help when we go that route, right? So I don't know. You want to add anything to that, babe?
Um, I don't know. sex is it's a beautiful thing in your marriage, but then it's something that you have to take the time and read your partner, know your partner. It's not always gonna be whoa, like the best sex ever. It all depends on your motive and your mindset when you enter that bedroom. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Am I trying to please my partner, or am I just trying to like
Please,
satisfy
please
myself?
myself. Yeah.
Right. So it's all about your mindset and your mindset that you have coming into the bedroom. At the end of the day, we both have to try to please each other and satisfy each other in whatever way it takes, right? So if you're coming in the bedroom for selfish desire, that's a big turn off. Like, you know what, I just want to set up myself and okay, good night, bye. But it's something that you guys need to communicate. It's very important to communicate about sex, what you're doing wrong, how you like certain things, what you don't like. And some people are very shy to communicate to their partner about sex, right? But it's very important so that they know, okay, next time I'm gonna do this to please my wife. Next time I'll do this to please my husband. So it's very important to talk about it and just debrief after. It allow you to have a healthy sexual relationship with your partner,
Yeah.
to really communicate what works for you and what don't, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very important, guys. Very, very important. Now, another myth, another marriage myth is to assume that your spouse could read your mind.
Yeah.
Never assume that your spouse knows what's in your mind because many times,
Many times they do. They just don't wanna. They like. I feel like Michael knows when I'm mad, but he just ignore it because he want me to say it. I'm like, you should be able to know I'm mad. Like, it's like you should be able to know what you did, but then
but then what?
you want me to say it. I'm like,
Yes.
I don't want to say it. You know.
Yeah. So and that's where the issue lies, right? When you want that communication, because maybe I do know, but maybe I don't know. So a lot of times we don't really know. So the best thing for us to do is to just be open and honest, and to get to that point sometimes it's not easy because of pride or because not only
Oh, you
that.
know
Well, what do you mean?
when I'm mad.
How do I know when you're mad?
No, you know what I'm mad
I
about.
know I know what you're mad about sometimes. You see what I mean, guys? So I don't know if she's mad or when she's mad at times, but sometimes I do, and sometimes I play ignorant. So I think I think overall that's something that we just can't jump to assumptions, right? I'll just leave it as that. Like we just can't jump to assumptions. But there are times where no, your spouse may know. But once again, how do you know that they know? It seems like I'm going in circles with that, but that is a marital myth, right? Assuming that your spouse could read your mind. I say it this way, guys. Keep it simple, right? Just keep it simple. I know it's difficult sometimes for some people, but keep it simple. Trust me, it'll go a long way. Another myth, guys, you want to share with you? Having kids, this is a huge myth, by the way, if you don't know. Having kids brings couples together
Closer.
or closer, right? You want to talk on that? Is that true?
No.
So when we had kids, we had our first child a year after we got married. You remember the difference between before we had our son and then
Yeah,
after we had?
and before we had and my our son, we were, oh my gosh, so close.
We were close. Yeah, our first year of marriage. I guess they could call it the
Our
honeymoon.
first year
The
of
honeymoon
marriage
phase.
was great.
Yeah.
Like, I know some people have a really bad first year, but our first year was great.
Mhm.
We were in love.
Yeah.
We were just
We're doing our
doing
thing. No
no.
distractions. Doing our thing, guys. You understand?
Yeah, we were just close. I wish we traveled more, but we just there was no worry. Like, there was nothing. You just pick up and go.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know. It was just easier. Like, we cook a meal and that's it. Like there was no one to think about. There's no one to care about but
Yeah.
us,
We used to
right?
go out a lot. Remember, we used to go down to Markham Station, right? We just buy food and we just drive back home and eat and enjoy
We
each
used to
other.
eat a lot. I like eating out, but we
Yeah.
used to eat a lot. We
So
used to like it was just different.
so
Like
now, guys, this myth that having kids brings couples closer. I don't know. I think that having kids has the potential of drawing couples
for
further,
the very
right? Because you guys come together, couples come together for the kids, but it's not really bringing the couple together. It's like, what are we going to do for the best interest of our kids? And a lot of times, unfortunately, in a lot of marriages, the kids dictate the marriage, right? And the kid and the marriage becomes all about the kids. And then when the kids are gone, there's really no marriage. You
yeah, like
understand? So
having Micah. Oh, anyway, what's his name? Having
yeah,
our first child, definitely it was hard. We were first time parents. Micah was crying. Micah
I
got
remember that.
all the attention. I got really depressed. I was like, what is going on? Um, having our second, it was a little bit better, but just kids in general. Like my daughter take over the bed. Like
Everything,
my like
guys.
they take over everything. Like she wanna
Everything.
sleep with
Like
me, and Michael gotta find somewhere else.
I gotta find somewhere else to sleep. So I look,
Like
to keep it a buck right now, our current situation, I rarely sleep with my wife. Right? I rarely sleep next to my wife. Why? Because my daughter is there. And so there's not much I could do at this current point, right? So that's what we're basically saying, guys. So this is a hot myth. I think that you gotta even work harder when you have kids to keep that marriage.
yeah, I have to find some time.
Um,
Sometimes when
function.
she's sleeping, I just bring her in a different room with her brother or something. I'm like, okay, and my husband next to me. Like,
Yeah,
we gotta find ways.
you gotta find ways. So all right.
Mm.
So another myth we want to share with you guys. Happy couples don't argue. So basically, if you are happy with each other, then there's really no arguments going on in marriage. A lot of people are living in la la land because marriage is filled with arguments. Now, I'm going to keep it 100%. Before we did this live stream, we had an argument, a very minor argument about what was it about toilet paper not being on the roll.
Yeah.
For me, minor. For her, major.
It's not major. It's just like it's something I've repeated
Yeah.
several
So
times, and
so
it's getting
so so
annoying.
so for her, it's tedious, right?
Yeah.
And it's annoying. For me, is what's the big deal? So what happens now is an argument occurs, right? But guys, we've enjoyed our time together for the
Mhm.
last few days now, right? So we've been happy, right? But even in the midst of the happiness, we're having arguments. Now,
Like, what
go
do you
ahead.
consider like? Because we don't have like big arguments often. Like
No,
like some people argue and it's bad.
yeah,
We
yeah.
don't have that bad argument. Like it's just like like
We argue,
we
right?
we are, but it's not
We argue,
terrible.
but we don't take it. Most of the time, we don't take it to the next
And if
level.
we feel like it's not going anywhere, we just stop and give each other their space, and we'll reapproach it another time. And the next day, later in the day, I remain sour, and he remain gloomy, and we just reapproach it and talk about it.
Yeah, and then we just do what we can to move on.
Yeah.
And this is the reality in every marriage that there are arguments. There are times where both spouse don't see eye to eye. It's naive to think that two humans who are not perfect at all, we're still sinful, don't argue because they're happy or whatever the case may be. Happiness is an emotion, so there are times where you're not happy anymore and you get into arguments. So this is fairy tale stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this is not really true of a marriage. Neither is it true of a Christian marriage.
And especially when you just get married, I feel like you would argue more than being married for like 10, 11 years. So for
Yeah.
us, there's certain things I used to and like nagging about it. I don't anymore because I'm like, you know what? If after 11 years you didn't get it, you're not gonna get it now. So there's some things you guys have to like whatever.
True.
So, like when we first got married, we just started living together. Of course, we had some hiccups. Hey, why are you doing this? Why are you not?
Yeah.
Being messy, like little petty stuff. And you still didn't get into a big argument, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But you get to just choose your battle, pick what to argue about, pick what is not. It's not necessary. Like really, like why am I gonna fuss over that? And just let it die. Some people want to argue for every little thing, and
Mhm.
like there's something I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You're not gonna do it. Okay, I'm not gonna do it. And it's like it's
Mhm.
dead. Like you know,
Yeah. Some things are not worth it.
you have to find common ground with each other, and like, hey,
Yeah.
it's not worth it. It's not worth me being so mad and not sleeping at night.
Yeah. And another myth we have here is a married couple has to do everything together. What exactly does that mean, babe?
Oh, like some married couples. Oh, they don't go out with friends anymore. They're just so attached to the husband wherever he goes. They want to go. If
Mhm.
he go out with friends
They
to a
want
restaurant, they want to
they have to
be
be there.
there.
Yeah.
Nah,
There's unhealthy attachment, right?
yeah.
It's unnecessary, guys. It's unnecessary. I believe a healthy marriage is understanding that though the Bible speaks about the two becoming one flesh, yes, we become one, right? So we do things to not offend each other and not negatively affect each other. But that being said, Emmeline has interests and I have interests, right? That are separated. Like I have my own interests, and there's certain things that I'm just interested in that she's not, and vice versa, right? So I think a beautiful thing to think about is find the things. That's why you marry the person you're with, because there are things that she's or he's interested in that you are. So find common ground with that. Spend time with your spouse in regards to those things, and find something that you alone are interested in and your spouse alone is interested in, because I believe that it's very important at the same time to know yourself. Like sometimes being invested in things that your spouse is not necessarily there with, it's good for you, like for your
Mhm.
mental health,
Yeah.
right? You just go, just be free, go out with your friends at times, go, do something for yourself, for your own sanity, you and God, like your spouse is not God. And a lot
Yes,
of
yeah.
times we feel like, oh, my spouse is like, no, no, no. So it's okay. And you don't have to feel guilty, if your spouse doesn't tag along all the time.
And okay, there's some spouse that just leave their wife at home and go out every weekend with their
Mhm.
friends.
Yeah,
Okay, you can't do that.
yeah,
Go out every weekend. Yes, you need your personal space, you need time for yourself, but you need to balance it.
yeah.
You need to balance what you're doing.
That's the key.
Balance is important in everything. You need to balance it. Like me, I go out with coworkers, I go out with friends, but not every weekend. I have kids, I have my husband, I have to spend time with them too. He goes to basketball every
Every
Sunday.
Sunday, kid. Every Sunday.
Oh my god.
Well, look, guys. I look and scheduling too, right? So
And even when I try to stop him from going
yeah, she
sometimes.
does.
Because I'm like, okay, every Sunday. I'm like, okay, like like come on, this Sunday stay home. I try to stop him sometimes. I'm like, okay. It's getting redundant. Like it's getting boring now. Every Sunday you're leaving. No, 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 no. Stay.
Yeah,
But he still go. He don't care. Like you like, I'm going. He still goes. So.
yeah. But so it's all about communication, and it's all about timing as well. You know.
Mm.
But look, guys, we don't have the perfect marriage. We've just been married for 11 years, and I guarantee you guys, and when
There's some people that's been married for 40, 50.
and they don't have the perfect marriage, right? But
No.
we're just sharing things with you guys that look, there are many things that we struggle with, and we're still trying to grow. But we just hope that whatever we were able to share with you guys has been helpful in some way,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, like, for those of you who are not married, especially, how to really begin to look and to gauge, a potential spouse, in a healthy way, right? So that's my prayer for you guys. Emily, do you have any final words you want to share on that note?
No, just remain consistent in trying to make your marriage work and fighting for it and growing together and building each other up, being a support for each other,
Yeah.
and being here, being a listening ear, just being there, trying to fix things before it get worse, working on everything every day, your love for your spouse,
Mhm.
your intimacy, everything is a working
It's a work in progress.
progress.
And
You gotta
don't
keep
take your spouse for
working.
granted. Never take
Yeah.
your spouse for granted.
Don't feel like, oh, I'm married now. I'm married now. I got you already, so it's okay. I don't need to pursue you anymore. It's a continuous pursuing. Like you don't stop pursuing the one you love. And it's so people they stop pursuing. Even Michael, he gets so comfortable with me that
Yeah.
he will pursue other things,
Mhm.
maybe a new business plan or whatever he's interested in. He'll pursue. Like, okay, excuse me, I'm here. I'm still here. Like like
Yes. Right.
yeah.
And so yeah. So and I think that's why we say invest in your marriage, right?
Mhm.
If there's anything I learned in 11 years is just do things together and find ways to invest
Yes.
in each other. Anyways, guys, we got a video link in the description area. Got to check it out. 8 tips that will help you not get a divorce, guys. 8 tips that will definitely save your marriage. We made that video during our 8th year anniversary, and I believe that video, even till this day, is extremely vital. So check that out in the description area, guys. If you did not catch this live stream, we're going to have it posted immediately after the stream, so make sure you watch it. And right after this live stream, dip down to the description area and check out 8 tips that will save your marriage. Very, very vital. Anyways, guys, that's all we got today. Once again, this is the place to be, all right, where we help Christians answer hard, tough questions pertaining to God, life, and the Bible. Anyways, it's Mike and Emma. We're signing out. Until next time.
Yes.
Peace.